She was going to die. 10-year-old Emma Winters dangled from a crumbling ledge, 30 feet above jagged limestone, the wind ripping her terrified screams into the open canyon. Blood streaked her forehead. Her tiny hands clutched the rock with what strength she had left. Her left sneaker was gone, and her voice, raw and cracking, called for someone, anyone, to help. But no one came. Except for a dog. A battered German shepherd, fur streaked with blood and dust, stood at the edge of the cliff, barking. Not once. Not twice. Over and over, until his throat went hoarse. He paced, he howled, then he ran. And that's how it started. The call to 911 came from a jogger near Falcons Ridge Trail, who heard barking that sounded like a child was being murdered. Within 10 minutes, Sheriff Mitchell Brooks stood beneath the cliff, squinting into the blistering sunlight, and gasped. A little girl, barely visible, hung onto life with one hand, the other wrapped around the waist of the dog now lying beside her, keeping her body from sliding further. That German shepherd had led him there. No leash, no collar. And from the look of it, he'd already been through hell. Jesus, Brooks muttered, yanking a coil of rope from his truck. Hold on, sweetheart, I'm coming up. Falcons Ridge wasn't just a tourist trail, it was local legend. The limestone cliffs ran a razor edge above the county's old mining country, and every year someone got careless. But this wasn't carelessness. Not with the blood on Emma's face, not with the panic in her eyes, and not with the way that dog, now collapsed beside her, refused to move a single inch away. Emma's tiny voice carried over the wind. He wouldn't let me fall. 10 minutes later, with the help of EMTs and a harness system, they pulled Emma and the dog to safety. She was dehydrated, bruised, scraped raw, but alive. The paramedics asked her questions, but she couldn't stop talking about the dog. He was already there, she said, waiting. Like he knew. Dr. Sarah Collins from Oakage Veterinary pulled into the scene just as the sheriff was loading the dog, unconscious but breathing, into the back of her truck. She was the only vet for 40 miles, and from the looks of things, she was going to need every bit of her 20 years of experience. Bullet wound to the shoulder, thin, underfed. Multiple cuts and bruises, and old scars too, the kind that didn't heal on their own. Sheriff Brooks leaned over and said quietly, "Scan for a chip." She did. The name that popped up on her tablet made her freeze. Ace. Registered to Tyler Harrison, a boy who vanished 8 years ago. The news hit the sheriff like a freight train. Tyler Harrison had been just 8 years old when he disappeared while walking his brand new puppy. Hundreds had searched the woods for him. Helicopters, K9 units, volunteers. His dog, only a few months old, had been found a day later, alone. But Tyler? Gone without a trace. That puppy had grown up somewhere, alone, in pain. And yet, he had just saved another child. Emma Winters didn't know who Tyler Harrison was. Not yet. What she knew was this: she shouldn't be alive. And the dog she now called Ace had stayed by her side for hours. She told the doctors everything she could, how she'd slipped near the ridge, how she couldn't move, how he'd barked non-stop until someone came. Angela Winters, her mother, was a wreck. Newly divorced and starting over, she thought the sleepy town of Oakage would be the perfect place to rebuild. A quiet rental on the edge of town, trees, space, a clothesline in the backyard. Fresh air. No one had mentioned the disappearances. No one had mentioned the ridge. Later that week, Emma sat curled on the sofa, her left wrist in a splint, a bandage, above her eye. She hadn't stopped asking about Ace. "Can we see him?" she begged. "He saved my life." Dr. Collins agreed to a short visit. "He's still recovering, but I think seeing you will help him." They walked into the back room of the Oakage Animal Clinic, and there he was, lying on a padded mat, IV in his front leg, stitches in his shoulder, but alert. His ears twitched at Emma's voice, and when she crouched down, he lifted his head and pressed it into her lap. Angela watched, her mouth trembling. He remembers her. Dr. Collins nodded. He remembers everything. If you believe animals like Ace are heroes, just like we do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our community at Heroes for Animals. We tell true stories of courage, loyalty, and the incredible bond between humans and animals. Over the next few days, Ace refused to eat unless Emma was there, so the sheriff made a call. If the Harrison family doesn't want him, Brooks said, and Emma wants to care for him, I say we make it happen. Angela hesitated. A dog was a big responsibility, a wounded dog even more so, but she couldn't deny what she saw. Emma had changed. She wasn't just the quiet, watchful girl anymore. There was light in her again. He's going to need space. Patience, a lot of care. I know, Emma said. He may have behavioral issues. I don't care, Angela smiled. Then I guess we've got a dog. That night it rained. Emma lay in bed while Ace paced her room. He whined softly and kept staring at the window. She sat up, rubbed her eyes. What is it, boy? He growled low, moving to the curtain. She joined him. Outside, across the yard, at the edge of the tree line, she saw something. A shape, a figure. Standing, watching. Then lightning flashed, and it was gone. Emma turned to Ace. He hadn't stopped growling. She pulled her blanket tighter. We're okay now. You're here. But Ace didn't lie down until dawn. The next morning, Angela sipped her coffee while looking out the kitchen window. She watched Ace limp across the backyard. He stopped at a corner near the old maple tree and began to dig. Slowly, deliberately, like he was remembering something, or trying to find something. Emma, she called, come get your dog before he destroys the yard. But Ace wasn't playing, and Emma knew it. Whatever that dog had seen, whatever he remembered, it hadn't ended with her rescue. It had just begun. The first time Dr. Sarah Collins saw Ace dig, it wasn't during an exam or a checkup. It was a week after the rescue. She'd dropped by the Winters' home for a follow-up visit, half expecting the dog to be curled on the couch like most injured animals. Instead, she found him in the backyard, limping toward the same spot near the maple tree, nose to the dirt, pawing with quiet urgency. He's fixated on something, she murmured, hands in her coat pockets as Emma stood beside her. He does it every morning, Emma said. Right after breakfast, Dr. Collins knelt, watching Ace work. German Shepherds are thinkers, problem solvers. They don't repeat behavior like this unless it means something. Angela, listening from the porch, crossed her arms. You think he's looking for food or maybe a bone? Collins shook her head. No, he's remembering something. Emma's eyes didn't leave the dog. Or someone. Oakage wasn't a big town, but it had its stories. People still talked about Tyler Harrison in hushed tones, especially after the news broke that Ace, the same puppy Tyler had once walked, had resurfaced. Local reporters tried to spin the rescue as a miracle. Sheriff Brooks refused interviews. Too early. Too many unanswered questions. But Emma couldn't let it go. She searched online, every night reading old newspaper clippings about Tyler's disappearance. She even found a few grainy photos of him holding a tiny German Shepherd pup. Ace had been so small back then, and now he'd come back. With scars, with trauma, and maybe with secrets. One afternoon, Emma sat cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom, flipping through an old notebook where she now scribbled everything Ace did. Patterns, barking triggers, digging behavior, times, dates. She wasn't just keeping track, she was investigating. On that particular afternoon, she drew a crude map of the backyard and marked the dig site with a big red X. Ace rested nearby, dozing lightly. Every so often, his ears twitched. When Emma leaned forward to sketch the direction he always faced, his eyes opened. He was watching her, always watching. What are you trying to tell me, Ace? She whispered. His tail thumped once. It had been nearly 10 days since the rescue when something finally happened. Ace's digging became frantic, not playful or curious, urgent. Emma ran outside in her socks, calling to him. Ace, easy. What? Is it? This time he growled, not at her but at the ground, then he stepped back. Emma knelt and saw a small section of disturbed earth, compacted as if something had been buried long ago. She glanced around. Her mom was at the courthouse. Just her and Ace today. She ran to the shed and returned with a garden spade. What she unearthed wasn't large, but it changed everything. 3 feet down, her spade hit something hard. Not a rock. Metal. She scraped the soil away until a small rectangular box appeared, rusted, dented, and padlocked. Ace, she whispered. What is this? The dog whined, stepping forward, pressing his nose to the lid. Emma's heart pounded. The box looked like a strong box, something people used to store valuables or secrets. She tried tugging on the padlock, but it was old, almost brittle. A few hits with a nearby stone, and it cracked. She lifted the lid and dropped it with a gasp. Inside, nestled in red velvet, were teeth. Baby teeth. Tiny, pearly white, arranged, in rows like a collection. Below them was a folded piece of paper, a list of names. Tyler Harrison was the first one. Emma didn't scream. She didn't panic. She took photos with her mom's old digital camera, then buried the box in a different location, under the garden shed. That evening, when Sheriff Brooks came by to check in, Emma pulled him aside. I need to show you something, she said, pressing the camera into his hand. Brooks scrolled through the pictures. His mouth tightened with every name. Where did you find this? Ace showed me. Did anyone else see it? Emma hesitated. Principal Chambers came by. He saw me digging, but not the box. The sheriff's face darkened. Emma, he said slowly, I need you to promise me something. Don't tell anyone else about this, not your friends, not your teachers, not even your mom, and stay away from Chambers. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Not because of nightmares, though those would come later, but because she could feel, and now. Ace had come back for a reason, not just to rescue her, but to remember, to reveal, and she was the only one listening. The next morning, a sleek black car parked across the street. Emma spotted it through her window. The windows were tinted. No one got out. She mentioned it at breakfast, but her mom just waved it off. Probably one of Mrs. Patterson's nephews. Didn't she say they were visiting? But Ace growled the moment the car came into view. His entire body stiffened. Emma didn't say anything. She just pulled out her notebook and wrote, Unfamiliar car, parked across street, 7:12 a.m. Ace alarmed. She underlined it twice. Later that day, they visited the Pattersons for dinner. Emma listened carefully as the elderly couple swapped stories. At one point, Mr. Patterson mentioned the school, Oakage Elementary, and how odd things had started happening after they renovated the East Wing. I told the sheriff back then, he muttered, passing the mashed potatoes. Told him about the tunnels. Harold, Mrs. Patterson sighed. Not this again. No, let him talk, Emma said softly. He turned to her, eyes sharp. You know those cliffs? Back in the Cold War, they built tunnels under the school. Bomb shelters, they called them. Most were sealed, but not all. Some led out under town, connected half the place together. Emma's fork froze halfway to her mouth. You think they're still there? She asked. He nodded once. No, they are. That night, Emma sat by her window, notebook in hand. Ace curled at her feet. She thought about the box, the list of names, the tunnels under the school, and the man her mother trusted, the one who kept, showing up with 2 perfect smiles and summer enrichment flyers, Principal Edward Chambers. The next morning, Ace was restless. More than usual, he paced, whined, scratched at the back door. What is it, boy? Emma asked. He led her toward the garden again, but then pulled sharply toward the street, toward the school. He stopped at the edge of the sidewalk, tail straight, body rigid. He barked once, then twice. Emma stared at Oakage Elementary in the distance. Quiet, innocent. But now, she knew better. Something was there. Ace had known it, all along, and whatever he'd buried, whatever he'd waited years to find, wasn't the only secret left in this town. The next morning, Emma made her choice. Her mom would be gone all day, court depositions and client meetings, the usual. That left Emma alone until around 5 p.m., aside from Mrs. Patterson popping by at noon with leftover cornbread and curiosity. The old woman had good intentions, but Emma needed space. She needed answers. The box Ace had uncovered, now reburied under the garden shed, haunted her thoughts. 23 baby teeth, a list of names, all matching the missing posters she'd stared at on the sheriff's office bulletin board for years. Tyler Harrison, Lily Parnell, Jonas Kimball, and 20 others. She'd dreamed of them the night before. In her dream, Ace led them through a dark tunnel, lit only by the soft glow of his eyes. She followed, barefoot, stepping over cold tile and broken toys. She could hear whispers, breathing, crying, and someone calling her name. "Ace," she said now, pulling the garden spade from the tool shed. "Show me." The German shepherd, healed enough to move but still limping from his old wound, perked up and trotted to the corner of the yard, same spot, every morning, same urgency. Emma began digging, faster this time, her hands already blistered from the last effort. But this time, she didn't stop at the box. She dug past it, because what Ace was trying to show her, what his body, language screamed, wasn't just the box. It was what lay beneath. At about 3.5 feet down, her spade struck something again. Not metal, wood. The earth around it was compacted, but she cleared enough to expose the edge. A square frame, old lumber, faded, a latch, a crawlspace entrance. Holy crap, Emma breathed, heart racing. She brushed the dirt away and pulled. It didn't budge. Ace began to bark sharply, his body stiff. "Easy, boy," she whispered, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I need help with this." She grabbed the pry bar from the shed, leveraged the edge. The door gave way with a groan, releasing a rush of cool, stale air. Darkness below. She should have called the sheriff. She should have waited. But something deeper than fear pushed her. Not recklessness, not defiance. Instinct. She clicked on her flashlight, the one from her nightstand, and lowered herself through the narrow hole 1 foot at a time. Ace whined above, pacing. She turned and shushed him. "I'll be okay," she whispered. "Stay here, guard me." But Ace didn't listen. With a grunt, he followed her down, squeezing through the opening and landing beside her with a soft thump. Together, they entered the tunnel. The air smelled of mildew, rust, and something faintly chemical. The floor was damp and uneven, the walls lined with concrete and old piping. Emma moved slowly, her light cutting through the pitch black ahead of them. "This has to be part of the old bomb shelter," she muttered. From Mr. Patterson's stories. Ace walked ahead, ears perked, alert. Every few feet, Emma marked the wall with a piece of chalk she'd pocketed from her desk. Just in case she had to run. The tunnel forked. Ace sniffed the air and led left. Emma followed. The walls here bore marks, scratches, faint, frantic, child-sized. She stopped and touched one. 5 parallel lines etched into concrete. Shiver ran through her body. 10 minutes in, they reached a metal door. Big. Industrial. A keypad next to it, dark and quiet. Emma leaned in, listening. Faint breathing. A shuffling sound. "Children?" She knocked once. "Ace?" came a small, trembling voice. Emma's heart stopped. "Who's there?" she whispered. A pause. Then, "Are you the girl with the dog?" "Yes," she whispered louder. "My name is Emma. I found Ace. He led me here." Another voice, boyish and small. "Is he really Ace? Tyler's dog?" Emma glanced down. Ace had sat at the door, tail wagging softly, ears focused on the sound beyond. "I think so," she said. I think he never stopped looking. Suddenly, movement behind them. Footsteps. Fast, confident. Emma spun with the flashlight and froze. Principal Edward Chambers stood 10 feet away, no school tie, no clipboard. Just jeans and a plain button-down, sleeves rolled up, and a pistol in his hand. Well, well, he said softly. Curious little Emma. You never did like rules, did you? Ace, get behind me, she whispered. The dog didn't move. His ears flattened and a low growl rose from his throat. Chambers didn't flinch. Smart dog. Brave. But ultimately, predictable. He pointed the gun. Emma stepped in front of Ace without thinking, and then everything happened at once. A loud bark. A gunshot. Searing pain. Ace yelped and dropped. Emma screamed. Chambers grabbed her arm, yanked her away from the dog, and dragged her down another tunnel, the gun pressing into her back. They walked for minutes, Emma crying, bleeding, stumbling. Chambers didn't slow, he was humming now. Calm. I told your mother you had potential, he said. Too much curiosity, just like Tyler. Where is he? She spat. He smiled. Long gone. A different country. A different name. One of our most promising placements. Emma blinked through tears. He's alive? For now. He led her through a second steel door into a room lit with harsh white lights. A sterile hallway, cells, children inside, huddled, silent. Oh my God, she whispered. You see? Chambers gestured like a game show host. Not monsters, just opportunities. He shoved her into one of the cells and locked the door. Stay here, he said. We're relocating tomorrow anyway. I'll decide what to do with you after the shipment's gone. Then he vanished. Emma crouched against the back wall, trembling. A girl approached the bars from the neighboring cell. You're Emma? Yeah. I'm Lily, the girl whispered. Lily Parnell. Emma's breath caught. The list. The name. You were taken 3 months ago. Lily nodded. We thought no one was coming. I'm here, Emma said, and Ace is with me. He'll get help. He always does. At that moment, across town, Sheriff Brooks's phone buzzed, a broken message. Text from Emma's number. Found tunnel. At school. Ace hurt. Locked in. Then nothing. Brooks bolted up. Get everyone, he barked at Deputy Reyes. FBI. K9 units. Emergency response, we're moving now. Reyes blinked. What happened? She went to the school, Brooks snapped, grabbing his keys. Alone. Back underground, Emma stood on her cot, examining the air vent. Screws. 4 of them. Small. She pulled her house key from her pocket, jammed it into the first screw, and twisted. 1 turn. 2. 3. Ace had bought her time. Now she had to make it count. Sheriff Mitchell Brooks didn't remember grabbing his badge, his gun, or his phone. He just remembered Emma's text, half delivered, cut off mid-sentence, but enough to send his pulse screaming. Found tunnel. At school. Ace. Hurt. Locked in. It took less than 4 minutes for his office to light up like a war room. Deputy Reyes pulled the school blueprints from the archive. Agent Ramirez from the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force was already en route from a regional office. Brooks briefed the team with military precision. She's in the old tunnels beneath Oak Ridge Elementary, he said, voice steady but tight. And she's not alone. At 6:42 p.m., a convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled into Oak Ridge under cover of dusk. No lights, no sirens, just urgency. The community center, formerly the school, sat dark on the hill, silent and ominous. But behind it, tucked behind overgrown hedges and maintenance buildings, was a rusted door. The same one Emma had described. They found it unlocked and blood on the ground. Ace, Brooks whispered, kneeling beside the trail. It wasn't just dried blood. It was fresh. Agent Ramirez crouched beside him. He's still alive. Or was. Very recently, the team split. Ramirez and half the unit went toward the main structure. Brooks led the other half into the tunnel. Flashlights dimmed, weapons ready. The tunnel yawned open before them. Damp, narrow, low-ceilinged. Brooks felt like he was walking into his own childhood. He'd crawled these tunnels on dares. Back, when they were just Cold War relics. Back before people like Edward Chambers turned them into something darker. He turned to Reyes. "She's in here. I know it." 15 minutes later, they hit a locked steel door. Thick, reinforced, a keypad beside it. "Standard electronic lock," Ramirez said. "We breach it. We alert everyone on the other side." Then came a sound from within. A voice, small, clear. "Sheriff Brooks?" His blood ran cold. "Emma? I'm here," she called. "He's coming back. He's moving us tonight." Brooks didn't hesitate. "Breach it! Now!" 3 hard hits with a battering ram. The metal screamed in protest. Hinges buckled. The door flew open. The room inside was cold, sterile, and horrific. Rows of metal-barred cells. Cots. Buckets. No windows. Fluorescent lights buzzing like hornets. In the nearest cell stood Emma, her face pale and tear-streaked, but alive. He ran to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded fiercely. "He shot Ace. I don't know if he's alive. He took 2 boys earlier, Marcus and Ethan. There are more kids." Ramirez was already radioing backup. 2 children in transit. Suspect Chambers still on site. Secure the perimeter." They moved fast. A second team freed Lily and the remaining children. Then a door slammed. Footsteps. Gunshot. Chambers. Brooks shouted, drawing his weapon. Edward Chambers ran like he'd trained for this moment. He didn't head for the main exit. He vanished into a side corridor, one not marked on the blueprints. Brooks and Reyes followed, boots pounding, light, bouncing off cold concrete. They emerged into a side room, a dusty, unused archive. There, silhouetted in the emergency exit glow, was Chambers, still dressed like a principal, still holding a gun. He raised it. Brooks fired first. The bullet tore through Chambers' shoulder. He screamed and dropped the weapon. Reyes cuffed him before he hit the floor. Outside, the sirens finally came. EMTs, Media Animal Control FBI vans. Emma sat wrapped in a foil emergency blanket beside the ambulance, her knees tucked to her chest, watching everything. Then she saw them carrying something from the trees, a stretcher, a dog. Dr. Sarah Collins met them halfway. She hadn't even taken off her coat when the sheriff's call came in. Now she stood beside the gurney, eyes scanning. The blood-matted fur, the labored rise and fall of Ace's chest. Still breathing, barely. She climbed into the ambulance beside him, stroking his ears gently. "Hang on, Ace, you've come too far." The paramedic glanced at her. "He's your dog?" She looked down at the unconscious shepherd. "He belongs to a girl, and a boy, and a town that didn't listen soon enough." Back inside the underground facility, FBI agents processed evidence. They found maps, routes, a logbook with names and buyer codes. The horror was larger than anyone had guessed. Not just Oakridge, not just one school, a network, international, systematic, profitable. One agent found a file marked Subject 1A. It included a photo, red hair, gap-toothed grin, Tyler Harrison, still listed as active. Last seen 14 months ago. Location, Moldova. At the hospital, Emma sat in a white room, a nurse checking her blood pressure. Her mother, Angela, held her hand, lips trembling, eyes wide. "I didn't believe you," she said. "I thought you were just being dramatic." Emma didn't answer. She just stared at the window, then whispered, "Is Ace alive?" Angela looked toward the hallway. "They're doing surgery. Dr. Collins said she'd update us as soon as she knows anything." Emma nodded. She didn't cry. She just waited. That night, Sheriff Brooks drove to his office alone. The storm had passed. Oakridge was quiet again. But it wasn't peace. Not yet. He pinned a map to his wall and began placing red thumbtacks, each one marking a name from the list Emma had uncovered. By 2 a.m., there were 23.23 missing children, and God only knew how many more. Dr. Collins worked through the night. Ace's second gunshot wound had done more damage than the first. He'd lost a lot of blood, the bullet fractured bone, but somehow, his vitals held. She removed the round, stitched his muscle, monitored for shock. At sunrise, she texted the sheriff. He made it through surgery, still critical, but alive. Then she sat beside the recovery kennel and whispered, "You're a miracle, Ace. Rest now." 3 days later, the FBI raided a compound outside Chisinau, Moldova. They recovered 18 children. One of them had red hair, a scar across his left cheek, and the same eyes Emma remembered from the photo. His name was Tyler Harrison, and when they told him his dog was alive, he cried. Back in Oakridge, the community changed overnight. The school was closed permanently, the facility beneath it sealed. New center was built in its place, dedicated to child safety and recovery. Emma testified before a grand jury. Her words helped ensure Chambers would never walk free again. And Ace? He came home. The day they wheeled him out of the clinic, Emma was waiting. He limped toward her, bandaged but alert. She knelt down, arms open. He collapsed into her embrace with a soft groan. "I missed you too," she whispered, then looked up at the sky. Tyler's coming home. 3 months after the raid, Oakridge County began to look like itself again. Trees turned amber and gold, pumpkins popped up on porches, and for the first time in years, the town had something it hadn't dared feel. Hope. The elementary school was gone, bulldozed. What rose in its place was something new. The Oakridge Family Resource Center, built from donations, grants, and the sheer will of a shaken but determined community. Inside were therapy rooms, a child advocacy office, and space for after-school programs focused on healing rather than grades. And every Tuesday at 4 p.m., in the rec room by the back window, Emma Winters sat with a journal in her lap, taking notes on canine behavior. Because Ace wasn't just a hero. He was a teacher now. Sheriff Brooks had helped arrange it. After everything Ace had done and survived, it didn't feel right to call him a pet. He was a working dog, a survivor, and as Brooks put it, the best damn deputy I ever had. So once Ace healed enough to walk again, he was given a new job. Unofficially, of course. His new mission? Accompany Emma on her journey to become the youngest canine handler in county history. Every week, Dr. Sarah Collins taught Emma how to read canine signals, manage stress triggers, and create simple obedience routines. She even helped Emma lead short presentations for other kids who had seen more than most adults ever would, and always Ace was there, sometimes quiet, sometimes limping, always watching. Tyler Harrison's return came in stages. First was the call, "He's alive." Then came the photos from Moldova, a lanky teen with red hair and hollow cheeks, standing stiffly in a military-style uniform next to Interpol agents. Then came the wait. It took almost 6 weeks to navigate international paperwork, medical clearances, trauma evaluations, and flights. Tyler spoke very little at first. He flinched at loud noises, slept with the lights on, refused to sit with his back to a door. But when the plane landed in Indianapolis, and he stepped off into his parents' arms, the moment hit like a thunderclap. His mother collapsed sobbing. His father, a proud and broken man, clung to him like he was 8 years old again. And Tyler just stared at them, then finally whispered, "I remember." They didn't bring him straight back to Oakridge. Not right away. The Harrisons spent a few weeks in a secure facility for recovered trafficking victims. Tyler met with counselors, doctors, and trauma specialists. He didn't speak much, but he listened. He asked one question every single day. "Is Ace okay?" And every time someone would tell him, "Yes, he's safe, he's healing, he's waiting." The reunion happened in early November. Tyler stood in the Harrison backyard, hands in the pockets of a fleece hoodie, staring at the maple tree where he used to climb as a child. His parents stayed inside. They wanted him to have the moment to himself. The gate creaked. Emma walked in first. Behind her, Ace limped along, tail wagging slowly, carefully. Tyler turned at the sound. For a moment he didn't move. Then he dropped to his knees, Ace's ears perked. And then he ran. Not fast, not gracefully, but with all the strength he had left. Tyler wrapped his arms around the dog and buried his face in his fur. Neither of them made a sound, because some bonds are too deep for words. From that day forward, Ace split his time between the Harrison home and Emma's. It was never really a custody battle, more of a shared understanding. Tyler was still processing, still healing. But when he spoke to Ace, something changed. His posture softened. His eyes lit up. He smiled sometimes. He started painting again. He made a wooden memory box with his dad, filled with drawings, dog tags, and photos from before and after. He let his mom put up one of his paintings at the new center, an image of a dog standing at the edge of a cliff, howling into the wind. He called it The Watcher. Thanksgiving came with more seats at the table. The Pattersons hosted, as they always had, and this year their old house was fuller than ever. Angela and Emma brought sweet potato casserole. The Harrisons brought pumpkin pie. Tyler brought Ace. He sat on the rug near the fire while the adults talked and the kids played board games in the next room. Halfway through dinner, Mr. Patterson raised his glass. "This town," he said, his voice cracking, "has been through hell and back, but I'll tell you something. I ain't never seen courage like I saw from that girl and that dog." He tipped his glass toward Emma and Ace. Everyone stood. No one said a word, because they didn't have to. The weeks that followed weren't perfect. There were nightmares, panic attacks, court dates. National news outlets tried to turn Oakage into a spectacle. Some reporters camped outside the Harrisons' house. Others offered book deals or movie rights. The sheriff made one statement and shut it down. These are survivors, not entertainment. The FBI continued to unravel the network Chambers had been a part of. Dozens of arrests followed. Over 40 children were rescued from similar operations in the months that came after. But no town in America forgot the name Oakage, nor the dog who never gave up. In early December, Tyler walked into the Oakage Family Resource Center alone. He found Emma in the side yard, working with Ace on an obstacle course the sheriff had built using donated tires and wooden ramps. Tyler stood silently for a minute before saying, "He still listens to you better than me." Emma smiled. "You trained him first." "He trained me." They stood in silence for a moment, watching Ace trot over the course with his familiar limp. Then Tyler said, "You saved me, you know." Emma looked at him. "No," she said. "He did." He shook his head. "He never stopped looking, but you were the one who listened." Emma didn't answer. She just reached out and took his hand. Christmas came quietly. Just lights, music, no big parties. Tyler got a leather sketchbook and new pencils. Emma got a framed certificate from Sheriff Brooks naming her honorary K-9 Junior Handler of the Year. Ace got a new vest with his name embroidered in gold letters. They spent Christmas Eve watching movies on the couch, Ace curled between them like a living blanket. And for the first time in 8 years, Oakage slept peacefully. Winter in Oakage was quieter than most places. The snow came soft and slow, blanketing everything in white. Streetlights flickered to life before 5, smoke curled up from chimneys, and if you stood still long enough you could hear the hum of the town breathing, calmer, steadier than it had been in years. But some sounds never stopped, like the rhythm of paws across frost-covered grass, or the creak of a wooden gate as it opened to let in a girl and her dog. Emma Winters stood in the Harrison backyard, bundled in a flannel jacket, scarf tight around her neck. Beside her, Ace limped slightly, but his tail wagged with ease. The old German shepherd had been through more than most people could survive. 2 gunshot wounds, surgery, months of rehabilitation, and still he walked like he had somewhere to be. He always did, especially now because Tyler was home. The boy who had disappeared as a child and returned as a teenager was different now. Taller, quieter, more guarded. But the heart of him, That unspoken kindness, that spark, was still there. And every time he looked at Ace, you could see it shine. Tyler had begun working with Sheriff Brooks once a week, organizing old case files and helping digitize records for the FBI's new Missing Minors Task Force. It wasn't a big job, but it gave him purpose, control, a sense of justice. Emma sometimes joined him after school. The three of them, Tyler, Emma, and Ace, were rarely apart. They had lived through a story few people could understand, but they understood each other. The town had changed in ways both small and profound. New security cameras lined the rebuilt school. Teachers received training in spotting signs of abuse or trafficking. Sheriff Brooks gave monthly talks at community centers, educating families about child safety. Anonymous tip boxes were placed in churches, libraries, and coffee shops across the county, and people started paying attention to who was watching their kids, to who came and went, to who asked too many questions, or not enough. The scars left by Edward Chambers hadn't disappeared, but the town had stopped pretending they weren't there. One afternoon in January, Emma stood in front of her class and gave a presentation titled, "How a Dog Saved My Life," and helped catch a monster. She showed them pictures of Ace from the night of the rescue, his tactical vest from the sheriff's office, and the framed commendation that now hung in the community center's main hallway. Some kids cried. Some just stared. But every single one of them raised their hands when Emma asked, "Do you think animals can feel what we feel?" The answer was clear in their eyes. They already knew. Dr. Sarah Collins had started collecting stories, not just about Ace, but about other animals who'd acted out of instinct, loyalty, or something deeper. She called the project Silent Guardians, and she hoped to turn it into a traveling exhibit someday. She asked Emma if she wanted to write the first chapter. Emma said yes. She started with this sentence: "Ace didn't speak my language. He didn't need to. He remembered everything I was never told." Tyler's therapy continued, but it began to shift. Less about surviving, and more about rebuilding, about moving forward. He started sketching again, portraits this time, not just of Ace, but of the kids he'd met in Moldova, of faces he remembered from the cells. Some had been rescued, some hadn't. But drawing them helped him hold on to their names, their dignity. He didn't want to forget. He made one drawing of Emma, too. She didn't know until he handed it to her, wrapped in brown paper, no note. It was of her kneeling beside Ace, hand on his back, both of them looking toward a distant light. By spring, the case against Chambers went to trial. Federal prosecutors didn't hold back. With 23 victims confirmed and more still being identified, the courtroom overflowed with media, law enforcement, and victims' families. Emma testified via video. Tyler chose not to. "I said everything I needed to," he told the sheriff. Ace said the rest. Chambers never showed remorse. He sat stiff in his chair, expression blank. But when the jury returned their verdict, guilty on every count, Emma felt something shift. It wasn't relief. Not exactly. It was the weight of justice. Heavy, necessary, real. That night, the town gathered for a candlelight vigil at the park. Each flame represented a child. Some rescued, some lost, all remembered. When it was over, Emma and Tyler walked home together. Ace trotted behind them, slowing only to sniff the edge of the sidewalk where wildflowers had begun to bloom again. The wind was gentle. The stars were bright. Emma looked up and whispered, "Do you think he knew this would happen?" Tyler glanced. Over. "Who?" "Ace," she said. "Do you think, from the start, he knew what he had to do?" Tyler didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I don't know if he knew, but he never stopped trying." In April, Ace turned 10. Dr. Collins threw a small party at the clinic. Peanut butter dog cupcakes, a string of balloons, and a bone-shaped cake that said, "Forever our hero." Emma laughed when he barked at the candles. Tyler even smiled for a group photo. The sheriff gave him a custom collar that read, K9 Ace, Service, Loyalty, Legacy. He wore it proudly. One Saturday morning, Emma woke to find Ace sitting at her door. He didn't bark. He didn't wag. He just stared at her. Something in his eyes told her today was different. She called Tyler. An hour later, they stood at the edge of Falcon's Ridge, the same spot where it all began. Ace stepped forward, nose to the wind, ears twitching. He sat and stared into the valley. Not scared, not alert, just still, like he'd been carrying a memory for years. And now, finally, he could let it go. He passed away peacefully a few weeks later, in his sleep, at the Harrison home, curled in his bed by the fireplace, between the two people who owed him everything. They buried him in the backyard. Beneath the maple tree, Tyler carved a marker from cedar. Emma painted the letters. It read, Ace 200X. 2025, he remembered what we forgot. He saved what we nearly lost. Good boy, forever. Sometimes in the early morning, Emma still walks the trail along the ridge. She talks to Ace, like he's beside her. She tells him about her classes, her new puppy, her goal of becoming a real canine handler someday. She asks if he remembers. Of course he does. Thank you for staying with us through this incredible true story. From a quiet town with too many secrets, to a dog who refused to forget, to a girl brave enough to listen, and a boy who came home. We hope their journey moved you as deeply as it moved us. Now we'd love to hear from you. What do you think animals know that we so often miss? Have you ever experienced a bond so strong it defied logic? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe animals like Ace are more than just pets, if you believe they're heroes, make sure to like, subscribe, and join our family here at Heroes for Animals, because stories like this remind us sometimes the greatest heroes never say a word. They just remember and protect until the very end.